The world of backpacking awaits you, but are you ready for the obstacles that it comes with? So today's video, we are going to dive into the life of being a backpacker, and we're going to talk about some of the most common ideas such as budgeting, safety, health, loneliness, and the experience of having culture shock when you land into these new countries, and how you deal with all of this. And finally, we're going to be covering the expectations versus the reality of actually being a backpacker or a nomad person traveling around these different countries, and what it's really like to be on the road compared to what people have been telling you. But first, guys, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, the like and the subscribe button. They're both free, so definitely take advantage of one of these because why not? They're free. Backpacking could be an ideal life for somebody that's finishing university, becoming an adult, someone that's newly retired, and the rest of us that just want to break away that normal life that our families and our parents grew up living. Let's talk about some of the most common concerns that come along with backpacking and traveling abroad, and what's really life like when you do jump onto this ride. Backpacking has this idea of banana-sized backpacks. Walking around with dirty-ass airwalks, seeing amazing things that you wouldn't see back in your home country, while taking pictures, getting extremely drunk, and trying amazing food. If you thought this is what all backpacking was all about, you're kind of right. So today, let's talk about the most common experiences and issues myself and other backpackers have experienced and went through while traveling abroad. Coping with loneliness and being homesick. Loneliness has to be one of the most common concerns when it comes to backpacking and traveling while living abroad. Traveling to another town within your country, that's not really a big deal. It's pretty easy to adapt. But traveling across an actual ocean to the other side of the world is a whole new world of situations, problems, concerns that we have to be aware of. I've seen countless teachers in Vietnam back in 2015. They came out here, they got a job as a teacher, they went through the training program, they got their TEFLs, they started teaching classes, and within a few months, they went back home because they got so homesick that it started making them physically sick. This is something a lot of people don't prepare for nor know how to deal with. When you are talking to people back home, your family, your mothers, your sisters, whoever you're talking to, keep it simple, keep it brief, and try to avoid talking about what you've missed back home. Don't talk about how John had his birthday party, they wish you were there, and etc., etc. This type of stuff is only going to hurt you. Any long conversation like this should just be avoided, not to avoid your family, but to protect your own emotions from going crazy or just getting that physical homesickness that usually comes along with this. If not, you're only setting yourself up for homesickness, and it will come. Because again, this trip itself is just a chapter in your life. It's going to be short-lived, 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years at most for most people. And then you're going to go back home. This is a chapter in your life that you're going to have memories about forever. So don't come here and get homesick and be obsessed with home and just ignore the moment that you're actually having. Not many people have the opportunity or the finances to do what you're trying to do. So enjoy it. And also, don't be a hermit. Get out, meet locals if you can. Go hang out with other native teachers, hang out in Western areas, and talk to other Western people. And really, hang out with other native teachers, or go to these Western spots and find other Western like-minded people, and keep this part of your routine while you're living out here. And using other types of apps like WhatsApp, Facebook, or even Reddit forums just to find other travelers or meetup groups is another great way to meet other people. Really, this could be a lifesaver, just finding other like-minded Western people to talk to. The idea that you can sit down and have an English conversation with somebody else that speaks English is almost life-changing when you are out here for 2 or 3 months surrounded by people where you can barely understand, or your communication skills in Vietnamese or what other country you're in is very limited, not allowing you to really express what you want to say or just get things off your chest in general. And also, Tinder is a great app to use out here in Asia. It's not used for what a lot of people think out here. It's used a lot of times by locals to find Western people to talk to for language exchange or even meeting new friends. Now, I will say it is used for other things. Using Tinder out here is a great opportunity to meet a lot of other like-minded people or even meet some local people that you can become friends with. Nothing serious has to come from it. And for me, I've personally created a couple Telegram groups of like-minded people, motivated people, people that are doing things for their business or whatever they're doing. And this has allowed me to stay grounded and also be around like-minded people no matter where I am around the world. If you are into business, if you're into entrepreneurship or investing or anything like that, leave a comment below. The first 3 people I see that mention it, I'll invite you to the group. It's a great little group and we just talk about stuff and we motivate each other. But stuff like this is a must-have when you're traveling abroad to keep yourself from getting homesick and losing your mind. Cool vibe. Like every time I meet a Westerner, being out here for 4 or 5 years, it just doesn't matter. It has that vibe where you sit down, maybe grab a beer or a drink, get a coconut water, and you trade war stories. You talk about the next awesome place that you should go visit, or even just like stories and experiences they've had that you could share with them. Whatever it is, it's allowing you to communicate with like-minded people and explore different ideas, and it just keeps you calm in the reality of all of this, guys. Loneliness is a big reason why a lot of people cut their trips very short, or they turn to drug abuse or alcohol. So prevent it before it happens. And with that being said, let's talk about the next subject, adapting to new cultures. Authentic culture experiences come down to just being around the locals themselves, not staying around a bunch of Western people all day living in the country, but being around the locals. And this can be living in areas where other local people are at, eating street food, or going to restaurants where you'll find the local people where they prefer to eat. And of course, learn some of the language. You'd be surprised how far you could get with just learning like 50 to 60 words in that language. And when it does come to food, try to avoid the fancy restaurants. Try the street vendors, try some soup kitchens. This is typically the food that the locals eat, and it's the most authentic to the country that you're in. And really, this could save you a ton of money, because you always see these videos about how cheap it is to live in, like here in Vietnam, for example. And I'll tell you a little secret. Banh mi's do not cost $1. They cost 30 to 40 cents a banh mi. You just have to be where the Vietnamese are eating it. It is way better than what you'll find on Bui Vin. I promise you that. And since we're talking about food, another one is pad thai in Thailand. This is something that I recently learned, actually. This is more of a tourist food than it is a local food. Thai people typically don't eat this combination of food. And I found that a lot of Thai people actually just eat fried food and rice, you know? So when you come out to find pad thai out here, it is actually really hard to find if you're not in a tourist area. So again, find where the locals are eating. Try their food. It's usually 100 times better than what you'll find on like a tourist road, and it's way cheaper. And this gets you more involved in the experience and the culture of where you are at, which is the whole point of traveling, right? And also be ready for the unexpected. This will allow you to adapt faster to pretty much the local area that you're living in, and also avoid getting scammed. I've personally found that going to homestays or going to like meetup groups for like language exchange are some of the best ways to do this, so you can start learning their language, experiencing their culture without going 100% all in. So it's a nice little put your toe in the water per se. Just getting enough down where you can communicate to an extent is a big part of learning about the culture and really taking advantage of what a lot of people already do out here. And another great part of it is you start understanding why people in these countries do what they do, and it starts making sense. Like seriously, I remember the first time I learned why Vietnamese honk at walls at 3 a.m. for no reason. It was life-changing. And finally, drinking is a big part of Asian culture, so do be mindful of that. Baijiu, beer Ahoy are typically not filtered, nor are they a regulated beer. So drinking these on day one of getting to Vietnam or China or Thailand typically is not the smartest thing to do, because your body's not used to the water and the bacteria that is used. And when I say these are made non-filtered or regulated, typically they're using tap water and stuff to make this alcohol. If you're not used to the water out here yet, you could get very sick very fast, and it wouldn't even be the alcohol getting you sick. And speaking of the alcohol part of it, a lot of locals, especially in Vietnam, are trying to get very sick from this type of stuff when they overdrink it. So do be mindful of that. And I know $1 for 3 liters of beer is extremely tempting. I get it, I get you. But is it worth it? Safety concerns. Is it safe to travel alone? Can I go out at night? Can I keep my things in a hotel while I'm out at night? The list goes on. This is one of the most common things that I get asked about when it comes to traveling, is the actual safety of the traveling itself. So is it safe or not? In general, the answer is yes. Safety in general in Asia isn't really a big concern, as long as you do what most tourists are doing and you stay in the tourist areas and you don't wander off to any dark alleys. And one thing about Southeast Asia is typically locals are intimidated or even scared of Western or non-local citizen people. So the chance of you being jumped or mugged as a guy or a girl is usually statistically pretty rare. Traveling alone or traveling with a group of people, you're gonna be pretty much okay and fine, as long as, again, you're staying in these tourist areas. Try to avoid the most obvious unsafe things or doing stupid stuff. The amount of times I've seen Westerners at Vietnamese-only bars yelling and screaming and throwing stuff and end up getting beat up is rather common than most people would think. So be smart and don't be a fool, and you'll be okay. And this does go for men and women. You're going to be equally safe to an extent on this stuff. If you're traveling with your kids, do keep them close, within view, within grabbing range at all times. I'm not saying nothing's going to happen bad. Anything's possible. But when it comes to safety, that is probably the only thing that kind of peaks above anything else. Really just enjoy the trip. You're not really in too much danger at all. Local customs and laws in Asia, or anywhere really, are pretty chill. Just be a good person like you would be back home and just don't do anything crazy and you should be okay. And if you're not sure what to do, just mimicking the local people around you, as long as you have a good judgment of what's right and wrong, you should be okay with a lot of stuff. And it's really that simple. If you do need to know what some laws are or stuff like that, check out the U.S. Embassy. It doesn't matter what country you're from. The U.S. Embassy breaks down what the local laws are for anybody visiting these countries that is not a local. You and me, as non-locals, are a bigger target for the police, meaning that you are easier to fine or throw into jail or bribe money from for acting a fool. They can make stuff up to get money from you. So the more chaotic and obnoxious you act, the more easier it is for them to see you and do what they need to. Don't stand out as much as you probably already do. Theft inside and outside accommodations. When it comes to theft in your accommodation, this is so random. It can happen, it can't. There is no statistic or like averages for this. It just happens or it doesn't. You really don't know. So when you are leaving your hotel, just have everything locked up in your bag. Even if you're locking your room, most hotels in places like Vietnam and Cambodia, they want you to leave the key at the front desk anyways. So just lock everything in your bag that's valuable. And when it comes to being in public areas, don't use your back pockets. Leave everything in the front pockets or in a purse or some kind of like bag. And if you have cameras, phones, or other electronics, try to have a strap onto it. So if somebody does try to yank it driving by, it won't go too far because it'll be attached to your hand. And really, theft is talked about a lot in Asia, but it really never really happens. Like out of everybody I know in all of Asia, I've only met 2 people that have ever been pickpocketed. I was one of them because I fell asleep at a park drunk. Don't do that. And the girl that I knew that got pickpocketed, she had her phone yanked off her because she was talking while she's driving. She probably deserved that, right? And honestly, I think over the last decade of living out here in Asia, the biggest crime or theft that I've ever seen is not people getting stuff taken from them, but what the locals are charging the Westerners because they don't know what they're paying for. Which kind of brings us back to the culture. Learn the language, save some money. It's really that easy. If you do have a problem with theft where something is stolen, the local police usually in these countries won't be able to help you too much. They won't know what to do. It could be a communication issue or they just don't know where to look. Also, when you get things stolen like MacBooks or phones, a lot of these thieves take out the chips immediately, so they're not even traceable. And also, if you go to your embassy, as of the U.S. embassy, they won't do anything unless your claim is over $5,000 anyways. And even if they do, they're going to have to contact the local police, which I just told you, they really can't do anything anyways. So if you do get something stolen, just consider it gone because it's pretty much gone. Your personal health while you're traveling abroad. So when it comes to health, try to avoid the local hospitals and really avoid those pharmacies that you see around in different corners that are selling medications and whatnot. And the reason I say that, places like the Philippines, the places like Laos and Vietnam, they only require between 5 to 7 months of actual training to sell over-the-counter drugs. And places more directed towards Vietnam, once these certifications are given, the person will open a company and usually have their kids run the store for them. The kids aren't even trained on any of this stuff. They just hear you say the word, they find that pill, they give it to you, they get the money. And that's saying they even give you the right pills. So this could lead to you getting the wrong drugs or getting more sick because of all the medication mixing, because they're not going to know what to ask you like a doctor would. Even though it's medicine, it could be a risk. And speaking of doctors, let's go back to the hospital idea. Try to avoid the local hospitals. We used to have this phrase back when I lived in Vietnam. You walk in with the cold, you walk out with the clap. Do you really get the clap? I mean, maybe. I don't know. But the idea is most hospitals in Southeast Asia are rather dirty. They're not maintained. People are screaming and pushing. There's always like people bunched up. They're spitting. They're smoking inside. The list goes on. A lot of local hospitals are just chaotic. And it blows the minds of a lot of Western people when they walk in there thinking this is actually a medical facility. So my advice for this is find a local hospital that's westernized. Like example, in Saigon, there's an FV hospital. It's a French hospital that maintains Western standards within the actual operating rooms and also in the lobbies. And they control how people act. So if somebody walks into an FV hospital in Vietnam acting how Vietnamese act, they will remove them. or to at least take action to get things under control. And a lot of people walk into these Western hospitals being locals, being aware that there's a higher standard. And speaking of these hospitals, if you do get a job out here, a lot of these jobs are going to promise you health insurance. It's actually a very big perk that Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia offers, free health insurance if you get a job with them. Do understand that these insurance cards that you get 99% of the time will not be accepted by westernized hospitals, but they're made to use at a local hospital. So these insurance cards typically won't cover those, and the hospital just won't take them. So ideally, have your own insurance when you travel abroad, or just pay the cash. It's typically really cheap anyways. I mean, you can get a root canal in Vietnam or Thailand for like $200. It's not expensive out here. And finally, speaking of health, be easy on the water when you first get out here. The day you fly out here, I recommend drinking bottled water, or at least going to like higher end restaurants when you're drinking water or sodas with ice in them. Majority of the ice that you find in Southeast Asia is usually tap water that's frozen. They deliver it to the restaurants break it up and they put it into your cup. So if you're not used to this bacteria yet, it doesn't matter what you're drinking, be it the beer, a Pepsi, a Coca-Cola, or just water. That ice is still going to have that bacteria in there regardless. And freezing it's not going to kill them. So my advice with this is stay at westernized restaurants or facilities for a while. Avoid the street food and street waters and stuff like that. Or when you are drinking beers and stuff like that, maybe mix some ice into it just until you get used to it. Giving up modern living. This has to be one of the hardest things for most people. Giving up what they're used to living with. And sure, you can move to Southeast Asia, pay a bit more, and live like you were back home. But you still walk outside to the same nonsense, so it's kind of pointless. You still have modern things here like hot water, bathtubs, air fryers, cars, all that kind of stuff. The real issue is the use of them. Washers, for example, are not that common to be used in places like Southeast Asia. And this really sticks with places like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and northern Thailand, where most people prefer just to wash their clothes by hand over using an actual washing machine. Now, this isn't to say that you can't get a washing machine in Southeast Asia, but do be aware a lot of houses aren't built to have them installed, as they're missing like the piping or the exit water pipes. And like I said before, a majority of people just don't care to use this stuff, nor do they want to buy them. And honestly, buying a washer in Vietnam is super cheap. It's not expensive at all, but people prefer just to hand wash everything. Also, things like cars in places like Vietnam, China, Cambodia, it becomes a real challenge to drive cars because a lot of these roads aren't built for it. As you'll find that roads are extremely narrow, some of them are just not complete, or the traffic is so widely out of control that there's no point in even driving a car out here most of the time. And that's mostly because a lot of people in Southeast Asia buy their license, and the first time they drive a car is when they buy that car. So kind of do what the local people do. It's a real cool part of being in the culture, and it really avoids having a lot of that culture shock because you're just adapting to what everybody else is doing. I mean, hell, you might just like a lot of this stuff. The ability to do a lot more with a lot less money. Money is always a factor when you're traveling abroad. And coming to places like Southeast Asia or South America, the concept changes a lot to the point where you can do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. And with that being said, I have seen so many Western people go broke faster than a drunken Las Vegas strip. If your life consists of daily bar nights, the bar girls, drinking, and eating out all the time, while you're staying on a lot of these party streets, I don't care how good you are, you will go broke. People don't really understand how expensive it truly is out here once you actually get out here. Let me give you an example just to kind of break down what I mean by this. So think about a teacher, for example. Their average salary in a place like Vietnam is about 40 million Vietnamese dong. If you were to go out nightly, you're looking to spend between 1 to 3 million Vietnamese dong a night. And I know a lot of you are saying, David, how can you spend $50 to $100 a night in somewhere like Vietnam? That doesn't even seem possible. And to you, I say go to Bui Vinh. Look around at what the Western people are doing. It'll make sense real fast. It is way more common than you would expect. It surprised me. Out of the five schools I worked at in Vietnam, well over 70-80% of all the teachers were pretty much broke by the third week. No joke. And another problem with this, as we just talked about earlier, it's very common for Western people to move out here and try to live like they're back home in Los Angeles or wherever you're from. Modern things in Asia can get very expensive, if not more expensive than the West at times. It really depends. Moving to a Western condo service apartment can run you up to half your salary per month. You're looking at like 15 to 25 million Vietnamese dong a month. And this is quite common for a lot of these people that are broke by the third week. And this isn't even accounting for the food they eat or the alcohol and all that other stuff. So if you are moving abroad to Asia or South America and you have no savings, no retirement plan, and no monthly income past what you make in the country or what you have saved, do not try to live like you're back home. You will go broke. And I've seen this hundreds of times. It's always the same 20-some stories. I'm gonna start a business. I'm gonna spend less. I'm not gonna drink as much. I'm gonna work extra hours. I'm gonna become a vegan. I've heard it all. And really, it's just a fairy tale of expectations versus reality, which brings us to our final section. Expectations versus reality. The reality of backpacking is typically an extreme of one side or the other. If you've seen my older videos, you know I'm extremely honest on what I do in Asia, how much things cost, and what life is really like out here. And you'll see in these videos, you go to the comments, there's a lot of attacks. People saying, oh, David, you're wrong, David, this and that. And then later, you'll see replies to those or replies to me and emails I even get sometimes where people are replying saying, hey, dude, my bad. I didn't realize what you said is actually true. I just got out here, blah, blah. And that's saying they didn't delete their comment already. This expectation versus reality is very important when you're traveling abroad. And another problem is you'll see a lot of these vlogs where they're traveling around, they're showing you the countries, but they're short. Typically, when I'm doing a vlog, it consists of between 5 to 8 hours of 4K content of a single idea that I'm doing in whatever town that I'm at. And a lot of that is removed, which makes a lot of sense. No one wants to see me walk around fighting taxi drivers over the cost of something, or fighting a vendor over the cost of a shirt, or walking 3 to 5 kilometers where everything is closed or there's just nothing to look at. But with that being said, remember your trips are what you make out of them. So just because it's boring, it doesn't mean it's gonna be bad. It's just something that you don't see on a lot of these vlogs. So with that being said, let's talk about the expectations versus the reality of traveling abroad. Budgeting and savings. There's no real number on how much you should actually save when you travel abroad. Typically here in Southeast Asia, you can get away with living on like $1,000 a month, which is perfectly fine to do as long as nothing goes astray and you're the most boring person in the room. Meaning if you came out here thinking, I'm just gonna spend $1,000, you should have $3,000 saved. And to give you an idea of how my life was, when I first moved out here in 2015, I came out here with $5,000 in cash in my hand, plus my credit cards. And I was fine for like 2 months. One thing people don't realize is when you make these plans back home, you're sitting in your room, sitting at the coffee table, writing out what you're gonna do when you get to these countries, all that stuff goes out the window the moment you land in the country. The moment I landed in Saigon, my whole agenda, my whole budgeting, everything went out the window. You just can't plan for what's gonna happen. And really, landing in a new country across the world, you're seriously gonna sit on a pitchy budget? No. My first month, I ended up spending about $1,500, $2,000 about for the entire month. 80% of that money was pretty much for drinking, doing tours, going out on like expeditions, going out to party roads, just fun stuff that was enjoyable that I wanted to do. Again, I traveled across the world. I'm not gonna live on a budget and stay in a hotel room all day, and neither are you. So we have to plan for that. Everything out here is ambiguous. And another thing to really consider, if this is the first time you're coming to whatever country you're going to, if it's your first time coming to Vietnam or Thailand or Malaysia, you're going to spend way more than you expected because everything is brand new. You're gonna wanna see it all, you're gonna wanna do it all. People are gonna be saying, hey, let's go do this tour. You're gonna be going to these parties, these street things. You're gonna be doing so much more than you expected. Looking at the internet on what options and tours are available is foolish. Never buy those tours online. Wait until you get here to pay for them because they're usually cheaper to get them here than they are on the internet, for one. And two, a lot of these tours suck. Seriously, majority of stuff I did in Vietnam sucked. The fun stuff was what I did on my own or with my other Vietnamese friends or Western friends, not those stupid tours you bought on the website. And if you are with other backpackers, there's gonna be a ton of pressure going around. Going on day trips, going out for a drink or 10. And I'm gonna tell you, refusing to do this type of stuff is gonna put you in a weird situation in this hotel, especially if you're gonna be staying with these people or they're gonna be at this hotel as long as you are. The moment you tell somebody, no, I'm just gonna stay in today, you're gonna start breaking that like bond that you have with them where they're not even gonna invite you anywhere you are. And honestly, most people don't even stay at hotels. They just stay there to sleep, and that's when they get back and pass out. They typically drink a lot, thus makes your friend circle, your inner circle, quite limited. Now, this doesn't mean that your only option in Asia or South America is to get drunk. I'm just saying like 80% of your friend circle is going to be depleted because of this. Because again, everyone's on vacation, man. A lot of them are going to be there just to drink and enjoy themselves and have fun, try new foods, jump in the ocean, whatever it is. It's going to involve spending money that you probably didn't budget for. And these are things, again, you can't really budget for. And when you're walking by and you're like, I really needed that root canal, and you see that it only costs $200 in Thailand, to where in America it's $2,000, you're probably going to get the root canal, right? So again, more money that you didn't budget for. And to give you one final idea of how my time did, when I first moved out here in 2015, my budget was 60-40, where 60% was for fun and 40% was for my cost of living. Within the first week, that 60-40 changed to 80-20, where I spent 80% of my money on alcohol, tours, parties, sleeper buses, going around to different cities, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was getting pulled left and right by so many different backpackers and people that I met. Like, hey, let's go do this. Hey, let's go do that. And then we would go to a tour. And we never even made it back that night. Like, we ended up going to a different town that night, paid for another hotel, even though we already paid for this hotel. A lot of unexpected things are gonna happen. You have to budget at least 3 times more than what you expected. If you're gonna come out with $1,000, just bring $3,000. Trust me. Do not be that broke dude, because it happens all the time. It is so preventable. And like it or not, even if you're coming out here to live long term or come out as a vacation, it's still gonna mentally be a vacation for you, because this is something 100% new. It's a whole new world for you. Your mind is gonna treat it like a vacation, even if it's coming out here and you're working on the first day. And speaking of working, let's talk about getting money at a job while you're abroad and the expectations of that. Now, if you have a degree, you have the option to teach English out here in Southeast Asia or South America. And if you don't have a degree, places like Cambodia will allow you to teach legally with only having a TEFL certification. So my advice coming out here, regardless of what your intent is, being a teacher, coming out just being a tourist, just a backpacker, is get a TEFL certification. They're easy to get. You can get it done over the weekend. They're relatively cheap. And the best part is they never expire. It's like a money insurance card. So if you ever need money, you bring out your TEFL, say, hey, can I work at your school? They're like, you're hired. Work for a month, work for a week, make a couple $100, get the hell out of there. It's an awesome thing. And like I said, these things never expire. Check the link below if you want to get an accredited one. This is the one that I use. It's worked all over Southeast Asia. I've used it in South America and Panama. It works. And you can get it done over the weekend. So check that link below. 50% knocked off. Get it done this weekend. This is a mandatory thing that you should have under your belt before you start traveling abroad, because you never know when you're going to need to make some extra cash, or you never know that you're just going to be like, you know what, I really like it here. I'm going to stay here in Thailand or Vietnam, because getting a TEFL abroad is a lot longer process than doing it while you're still at home. And it's usually way more expensive out here. And another option a lot of people do is teaching online. This is a huge opportunity. You can do it while you're home. You can do it while you're in Asia. Having a TEFL certification will put you ahead of a lot of the teachers. And surprisingly, a lot of teachers that teach English online don't have degrees. They don't have TEFL certifications. So if you have a TEFL certification, which a lot of Asian people consider a teaching certification for English, that puts you ahead of a lot of people, like 70% of people already. So get the TEFL, link below, save some money, get it done this weekend, and forget about it for the rest of your life, because it never expires. Cultural considerations. Culture around the world is not really what people expect or think it is. I've seen countless videos about Vietnamese, Chinese, South Korea, South America, Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, all having the nicest people in the world, the most caring people, the ones that will share everything. They'll share their clothes with you, they'll share their motorbike, hell, they'll share their wife with you, whatever it is. They're just the nicest people in the world, right? But the truth comes down to this. Most locals are going to be nice to you 99% of the time. And this I can promise you, as long as you stay in the tourist areas. And the moment that you venture outside of these tourist areas, start hitting these small farm towns or just cities outside of the tourist areas, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because people change real quick. With my 12, 13 some years of traveling, I have never been to a country where everybody was the nicest person on earth. You're always going to have a-holes. And this is the same in America, the UK, France, Europe. This isn't an Asian thing. This is around the world. When you are in a tourist area, everyone's going to be nice to you because you're money to them. But when you're living in a small town in one of these countries, you're kind of just a Western person that's like hiding or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of gossip about what they're going to say about you. But you're kind of one of the people at this point. So you're going to be treated as one of the people to an extent. So be ready for walks of life that are going to be both good and bad. And this really goes back to the beginning of the video when we talked about culture and language. It's because a lot of the times people will be mean to you, and it'll be because of you. It'll be something that you do. You broke some culture rule. You did something crazy or weird. You did something obnoxious. Learn the culture and learn a lot of the basics of the language. Learning like 150 words in Vietnamese will get you so far in a village of Vietnam, like way farther than you could expect. And with that language, you'll start learning the culture and you'll start understanding what is normal and what isn't normal. And I want to make this very clear because I know people are going to get angry about this part of the video. This isn't me saying that all these countries are bad. No few people are going to justify or be a dictation of how a country is. There's going to be a-holes in Malaysia. There's going to be a-holes in America. It doesn't mean all Malaysians or all Americans are bad people. It just means there's a few bad people here. This is common around the world. I'm just here to help you avoid a lot more than most people don't. Because I've seen a lot of Western people move to Phan Thiet or Lazi or go down to Dalat and be like, wow, these Vietnamese people are all assholes. But they don't realize that they're kind of breaking the culture norms. And they're actually being the assholes. They're being the tourist that's acting like a fool. So learn the culture, learn some of the language, and make some local friends if you do venture out to these spots. If you're just driving to a small village or something like that, don't expect people to bend over backwards for you. It won't happen. Drinking, drugs, and parties all night is a big part of backpacking and traveling abroad. And like it or not, being in a hotel, a hostel, a random restaurant, you're going to be ejected into it at some point. Even if you're an English teacher, you're going to deal with a lot of this stuff. In the location where you live in these countries, it really doesn't matter either. Be in places like North Thailand where it's super calm, Central Vietnam where everything's really chill, Malaysia, a Muslim-based country where drinking's not even a big thing, you still will find a lot of heavy drinking and drug abuse. And this isn't saying that all people are raging alcoholics or drug abusers in these countries. It's just something that happens. Like, it really surprised me. Places like Thailand, they regulate when you can buy alcohol. But when I started moving to Chiang Mai and these other like countrysides, dude, all people did all day was get drunk. They just sat around drinking. Like, they didn't get like hammered, like, hey! But they just drank beers all day from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It was just casual drinking all day. When I was out in Malaysia, we ended up going outside of KL to like the local area of Malaysians. And most Malaysians were drinking all day. Do be ready for that if you move out to like the village side areas. You're gonna run into some of this drinking and drug abuse. So don't think avoiding Western people is gonna get you away from a lot of this stuff. It is quite common in these countries. And drinking itself is a huge part of Asian culture. You're not gonna talk anybody out of it because it's just part of life there. And speaking of Asia, everything is a holiday in Asia. This is something I learned real fast. Vietnam, China, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia. Every day seems like it's a holiday. It's some kind of holiday, be it a government holiday or a special holiday or religious holiday. There's always a holiday. So don't be surprised if you're hanging out at your house and your neighbor, your local neighbor knocks on your door and says, hey, you want to have a drink? Today's a special day. It's going to happen. So that should break down a good understanding of what to expect when you do travel abroad, being the expectations versus reality, and what to expect when you come to the other side of the world. And regardless if your trip is long or if it's short, you're gonna run into a lot of these situations. And it's a lot better to know about them and be prepared for them than to be blindsided and then run into these problems not knowing how to deal with them. Because again, your trip, your vacation being short or long, it's gonna be what you make it to be. And it's gonna be how you react to these situations. So know about them, learn from this video, take notes, and understand what you need to know. So when you do run into these problems, you're going to be ready for them, and your trip is going to be awesome, I promise you. So save a bit more money than you expected. Learn a few extra words of the language for the country that you're going to be visiting. And pack your bags, get your money, and get on that plane. And get ready for a trip of a lifetime. Till then, guys, I will see you again.